The Ark of Gabriel. What is the Ark of Gabriel here? Because a lot of people probably haven't heard of that.
Yeah, well, it's not in the Bible. It was supposedly given to Muhammad, the beginning point of the Muslim religion. So it's supposedly given to Muhammad, and it is said to be a heavenly weapon that Archangel Gabriel had instructed Muhammad to keep safe and to keep hidden. So that's really the beginning point. Now, when you get to more details on it, there really aren't. There really aren't, other than the conspiracies under the surface that the Catholic Church had gotten hold of documentation on it and had sat on it for a long time, and then later gave it to the Russian Orthodox Church. But we'll get to that part a little bit later. So the Ark of Gabriel, the whole supposed finding of this thing was probably around 2015, actually, when it became public. I'm sure, people had known about it before then, but it was supposedly dug up during construction of a mosque, I think near the Hajj. And
the Hajj is in Mecca, right?
In Mecca, right. Yeah, the Hajj is in Mecca. So apparently what happened when this thing was dug up was that a sandstorm came, a massive storm, wind, rain, and a crane fell and killed or injured probably over 100 people there. Killed 100, and I think 200 were injured. Right, there you go. Crane collapse. Now, wow. Some of the people said that there was an explosion, like plasma, coming out of where they were doing this construction. They dug it up underground, right? Okay, so later on, they went back to construction, right? So there were all these Muslim worshipers gathering at Mecca to, go and circle the Kaaba, the big square structure they have in the middle of that.
That's the cube, the black cube, basically.
The cube, right? Exactly. On the side of it, it's got this meteorite, black stone, right? And they worship this.
They all touch it.
They touch it, right? When they were on their way to this location, because they the knows for sure like what truly happened here. These could have been natural random events, but this gets to what this thing was, and what some insiders or information coming in under the surface talks about this thing being the Ark of the Gabriel that caused these massive events to occur. Now, what happened after that was that the Russians, Patriarch Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, he and the Pope, the Catholic Pope, I don't remember which Pope it was, but those two, after 1,000 years of never speaking to each other, had a meeting immediately after this, okay? Which was curious. So then we find that the Russian Navy lands in a Saudi Arabia port, which is also unheard of.
Just so you know, it was Pope Francis. I just double checked.
Pope Francis, there you go. Right? So they had a meeting, right? What did they have this meeting about? So it's speculated that the Catholics gave Kirill information on this ark, and the Russian Navy was heading down there in order to pick this ark up and take it to Antarctica, a safe location. So oddly, these ships leave the port and they head towards Antarctica. Not long after, you find that Patriarch Kirill was in Antarctica as well. So he went down there. He followed them down there. If not, went on the ships. I don't know what he did, but he shows up down there in order to consecrate a church, a Russian Orthodox church in Antarctica. And this was around the time just before both John Kerry and Buzz Aldrin went down there.
I remember that.
This thing is
this is the Russian Orthodox Church down there?
Yep. So he went down there to consecrate that church. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, in a nutshell, that's the story of the Ark of Gabriel. We don't really know much more beyond that.
Now, is the Ark of Gabriel in this church thing in Antarctica?
So we were looking at why. With remote viewing, we were looking at why John Kerry went down there, why Buzz Aldrin went down there, and then later we had to look at why Kirill went down there. So when we looked at it, we saw that there was this massive ice cavern, and inside of this massive ice cavern was this thing. It was like, it looked like a big printing press, except it was extremely high in esoteric technology. It was, probably in the shape of an ark, as big as what you would imagine the Ark of the Covenant to be. And this device was able to transfer matter. So like they were doing weird things, like they were sticking apples in it, for instance, when we were remote viewing this. And these apples would dematerialize. The matter would completely break up, and then that matter would be transferred somewhere else. Now, it wouldn't be transferred in the form of an apple. It would be transferred in the form of some type of matter that someone else could use and reconstruct, right?
Probably plasma.
Probably plasma. Probably plasma. So when we were viewing this, it was like Buzz Aldrin was there. Like we were mainly focused on Buzz Aldrin. Like what was he doing? Because in the data there was this like connection between Buzz Aldrin and, oddly, I mean this just sounds wacky, beings on the moon. And they had there, like all the viewers saw this, they had there a bunch of these guys that were probably around 3 to 4 feet tall. They had these sort of big round faces with larger eyes. They weren't grays, but they were beings that they brought from, they seemed like clones. They were absolutely clones of each other. And they were specifically geared to help them figure out, specifically brought to help them figure out what type of technology this was. And that's why, you know, they're sticking random things in there. I imagine at some point they stuck one of these little guys in there too to see what happened to them. But what we saw was that they didn't know what they were doing. It was like they had no idea what this machine was, ultimately what it was doing, but they knew it was doing something absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we've got that data there, right? We've got this weird device. Now, we don't know if they actually found it under the ice or it was brought there, okay? So we get the remote viewing data, and remote viewers don't like name things. They don't say, oh, this is the Ark of Gabriel. They don't do stuff like that. Yeah. They only describe things, right? But we knew that it was very, 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 very old. It was something that was like left over from a civilization that would create civilizations. They were like the makers of civilizations, the makers of things.
And like one of these root races things?
Yeah, one of these root races. And these things were like this thing was left over from that, not in use. And there were other beings that wanted control of this device. When I've got all the remote viewing data, I even viewed on this myself, and I'm like doing research on it, I start to see this connection online with the Ark of Gabriel in Saudi Arabia. So of course, you know, we have to try to understand if that thing came from Saudi Arabia and it's the Ark of Gabriel. So, you know, we look into what happened to these people that were stampeding, what happened to the crane collapse, how did this stuff happen? So when we look at that, and then also what did they find, right? See if that lines up with our data. So I can say that it does look like in all of these cases, there was some type of plasma burst. There was some, it was more subtle than that. It was more like a very agitated, crazy energy that came out of it, right? It wasn't something that was so like apparent that everybody would see it. It was a lower level, like energetic burst, and it caused the people to freak out. It's like they felt burning on their body without really seeing too much, right? So they started to take off and run, and many people were killed. Then you have the crane collapse, where again, it was like something like melted aspects of steel. Like if there was some mix of like steel and some other substance, like when they're building a crane, like it would have melted those parts, but not all of it, right? It's caused it to collapse. So we see this stuff and we go, okay, this is very interesting because, you know, there's something weirdly esoteric happening there. And then we look at what it is that they found, and what it is that they found appears to be the same type of thing that they found in Antarctica, or